Types of assessment. Assessment is a purposeful activity aiming to facilitate students' learning and to improve the quality of instruction. Based upon the functions that it performs, assessment is generally divided into three categories: assessment for learning, assessment of learning, and assessment as learning. Let's understand what is assessment for learning. Assessment for learning is a continuous process and ongoing assessment that allows teachers to monitor students on a day-to-day basis and modify their teaching based on what the students need to be successful. This assessment provides students with the timely, specific feedback that they need to enhance their learning. The assessment of formative assessment is that the information yielded by this type of assessment is used on one hand to make immediate decisions, and on the other hand, based upon this information, timely feedback is provided to the students to enable them to learn better. If the primary purpose of assessment is to support high quality learning, then formative assessment ought to be understood as the most important assessment practice. Assessment for learning has many unique characteristics. For example, this type of assessment is taken as a practice. Learners should not be graded for skills, concepts that they have been just introduced. They should be given an opportunity to practice. Formative assessment helps students, teachers to determine next steps during the learning process. As the instruction approaches the summative assessment of the student learning, a good analogy for this is the road test, or the driving test. When you go for a driving license, you are asked to give a test. Before the final driving test or summative assessment, a learner practices by being assessed again and again to point out the deficiency in skill, and so that he can or she can cope up with that deficiencies, and after that she will be able to give his or her summative assessment test. A test for the final assessment, that is called summative assessment. Another distinctive characteristics of formative assessment is a student involvement. If students are not involved in the assessment process, formative assessment is not practiced or implemented to its full effectiveness. One of the key components of engaging students in the assessment of their own learning is providing them with descriptive feedback as they learn. In fact, research shows descriptive feedback to be the most significant instructional strategy to move students forward in their learning. And descriptive feedback provides the students with an understanding of what they are doing as well, and it also gives input on how to reach the next level in the learning process. Role of the assessment for learning is in instructional process can be understood with the formative assessment is basically divided into timely student achievement information. And timely student achievement information gives in the student side, it monitor individual student progress in terms of what the student should or should not, what student did or did not learn, and individual student progress also in terms of what the student can or cannot do. And on the other hand, timely student achievement information give information about to evaluate the instructional effectiveness, whether the instructional effectiveness addressed by modifying instruction or by warrants reteaching. So these all are information gathered on assessment for learning, and on that there are some other formative assessment strategies that can be observation, questioning strategies, self and peer assessment, student record keeping, and all these. And these all are done in assessment for learning, and that is called formative assessment, which is ongoing. And once you observe, you ask question, students self or peer assessment will give them help to understand where they are standing, whatever they have understood, and student record keeping. This will help teacher that where the student started, from where they started and where they are right now. And another type of assessment is assessment of learning. Summative assessment or assessment of learning is used to evaluate a student's achievement at some point in time, generally at the end of the course. The purpose of this assessment is to help the teacher, students, parents know how well student has completed the learning task. In other words, summative evaluation is used to assign a grade to a student which indicates his or her level of achievement in the course or program. Assessment of learning is basically designed to provide useful information about the performance of learners rather than providing immediate and direct feedback. As if we see that in assessment for learning, that informative assessment, it checks how students are learning and is there any problem in learning process that determines what to do. And in assessment of learning, checks what has been learned to date, till the date what they have learned. And if we say that assessment for learning, is designed to assess educators and students in improving learning. And assessment of learning, summative assessment, is designed to provide information to those not directly involved in classroom learning and teaching, school administration, parents, school board, and all in addition to educator and students. Assessment for learning is a continuous process. It goes on till the perfection, till the student earn and learn the skill. Usually use detailed, specific, descriptive feedback in a formal or informal way. But summative assessment or assessment of learning is periodic. Usually uses numbers, scores, marks as part of a formal report. And assessment for learning, you focuses on improvement compared with the student's own previous performance. And assessment of learning usually compares the student's learning either with their other students learning non-reference test or standard for a grade level criterion reference test. Then it comes assessment as learning. Assessment as learning means to use assessment to develop and support students' metacognitive skills. What is metacognitive skills? When we say metacognitive skills, mean they are gathering information about their self. They are helping themselves by the assessment, by assessing themselves that what they have learned from lifelong learn. They are also called lifelong learners. A student engage in peer self-assessment. They learn to make sense of information, relate to the prior knowledge and use it for new learning. What they basically understand what they know and what they want to know, what they have already learned, what they want to learn more. They enhance their learning day by day. Students develop a sense of efficacy and critical thinking when they use teacher-peer self-assessment feedback to make adjustments, improvements, and changes to what they have understand. So in these three, assessment for learning, assessment of learning, and assessment as learning, they are all equally important for the learning and for enhancing, for getting perfection in teaching learning process. So we cannot skip any of these in the learning process.